Hi everyone,
Hi.
It's Nikki and Rachel from the Stitch Sisters here, and the video that we've decided to bring to you this week is a little bit different because all of our videos, pretty much all of our videos without fail so far, have all been about dressmaking.
They have, yes.
And we love dressmaking, and it is my first love. And my one true love when it comes to sewing. But Nikki's background is a little bit different, and she started off as a quilter.
I did.
And as a crafter. So she's done a lot more smaller makes, like bags and cushions and that sort of thing. But her one true love is definitely quilts. And I think that's probably not changed, has it? Even though you still love dressmaking?
It's a 50-50 thing now.
Oh, okay, 50-50. But that is what you consider to be something that you would pour your heart and soul into, is making a quilt. A long-term project that is for somebody that you love. And the quilting that she only has time for these days seems to be English paper piecing, because that's what you spend many evenings sat on the sofa doing when we're not teaching. So today's video is all about English paper piecing, and Nikki is going to talk us through how she does it, and we're going to have a look at some of her beautiful quilts as well.
Yeah. So English paper piecing is quite an ancient skill, and it's basically using pieces of fabric which are wrapped around heavy paper or card, and then you sew the fabric through the paper just in a basting stitch to hold everything in place. Now these are normally shapes which are geometric. They don't deal with curves very well. So triangles, squares and hexagons are usually the one where everyone starts. And this was the first thing that got me into sewing. I saw a hexagon quilt and I decided I wanted to make one, and it was such an itch. I had to find out how to do it and how to scratch that itch. And I've been sewing them ever since. So you need a basic kit to do English paper piecing, and it will be stuff that you already have. So you'll need a little pair of sharp scissors, you'll need some threads, and I usually go for quite a neutral palette for stitching my hexagons together, and then you'll need a contrasting thread just to do the basting stitches. That thread can be any colour, it doesn't matter. It's coming in and then it's going to be taken off again at some point, so just something you wouldn't use very often. And then you'll need little hexagon paper, little pieces of paper cut into hexagons. That's the wrong way around. Do you see what I did there? So these are just little pieces of thicker paper. I quite like using photographic paper that you put in the printer because it's a nice weight. And the other thing I keep an eye out for is all the junk mail that comes through the post. So the lovely little booklets and little catalogues you can get, anything that's thicker than a magazine paper is good to use. And you can get templates to cut out your hexagons. You can get Sizzix machines have templates and things like that as well. So that means they all come out identically sized, but you can actually just trace them out and cut them out on paper.
Isn't there a website that you've used in the past where you can actually print out the sheets ready for you to cut out?
I think it's called Paper Pieced or something like that. I'll link it below so that you can go and click onto that, and you can download all kinds of different shapes and sizes. So you'll have hexagons in 15 different sizes. So you can
print off a full A4 sheet grid of hexagons, and then you just got to cut them all out. Yeah,
but it's good to print them off on a slightly heavier weight paper, because thin printer paper doesn't work very well, so you need something with a little bit of body. And you reuse the hexagons. That's the thing, that once you take the basting stitches and the paper out, you can then reuse it again. So you can see on my little one here possibly that it's got lots and lots of little holes in it. That means I've used it many times, so you don't need a lot of them.
No. And would it be fair to say that if you use normal printer paper you could and it would work, it's just that you wouldn't get to reuse them? You'd probably destroy them after just one use.
Exactly. You would destroy them after one or two uses, but I think that you need that thicker paper to have that edge to fold the fabric around.
Right.
If it's too thin, I just think you would end up folding the paper as well without even knowing it, and then you might end up with a hexagon that's not complete in its shape.
Yeah, okay.
So it's that you've got to be careful of, and that's why I like the thicker paper. Obviously it can't go too thick because you have to actually be able to get a needle and thread through it as well. So the balance between the two. And then little squares of fabric which I just cut out. Now I'm a lazy quilter as well. I'm lazy in most things. I don't cut my fabric into hexagons. I just cut it into a square that's got at least 1/4 of an inch all the way around each side, and then that's enough for me. I actually like having the extra folded in on the hem on the other side. I think it adds to the weight of the quilt. It adds to the whole feeling of it being homemade. It's entirely up to you. It's just one process that is quicker for me with the rotary cutter to cut them all out into strips without having to fussy cut them into hexagons. So that's the way that I do it. And then you just start and make hexagons. And then go on from there. I love doing scrap ones. So my itch to use every single piece of fabric that I have gets satisfied when I create a completely scrap quilt, and those are the ones that I make more than anything.
You're going to show us your little bag of scraps there that you're currently using. This
is my current pencil case full of scraps, which is for my current project. So it's getting close. Look at all of that. And that's just taken from scrap boxes, and you can get quite a lot of hexagon shapes or fabric shapes for the hexagons out of a small piece of fabric, because generally I like to work with the 1-inch hexagon. That's my favourite size because it's not too small, but it's not huge as well, so you can get away with having quite a small piece of fabric.
Actually, that's a good point, because I got caught out by this a few times after Nikki showed me how to do English paper piecing, and what I hadn't realised is this is called a 1-inch hexagon, but as you can see, it is wider than 1 inch. The 1 inch refers to the length of the sides.
Yes.
I thought it was the diameter.
No.
So I was printing off what I thought were 1-inch hexagons, and they were tiny because they were 1 inch across. So make sure that you know that obviously the length of one side is going to be smaller than the actual overall size of the hexagon.
Yeah. And you can go big. Rachel, you started an EPP quilt on a much bigger one.
After Nikki showed me, and she showed me with 1-inch hexagons, I straight away thought, that's going to take me forever. And I doubled the size and did 2-inch hexagons instead. And you can pretty much go for any size that you want. And that website that we'll put below was what I used to
find the hexagons.
To find the right size.
But that just means, to me, that means that I need more fabric. So all of the little bits of fabric that I need, I'm not using them up by using a bigger hexagon, because it might be that piece isn't big enough to even do one piece. So that's why I like the small one. I did do a quilt for you for your birthday, which was 3/4 inch hexagon.
Oh, and it's beautiful.
And we can insert a picture of that because we didn't bring it across today, but that took forever. And even that change between the 3/4 inch and the inch just added, it just felt as if the whole thing was in slow motion coming together. But it was worthwhile. I love taking a lot of time to make these quilts, and that's the special thing for me. It's all hand sewn. So shall I get some quilts out?
Yes,
shall we?
Let's show them some quilts.
I'll show you the one that I am working on at the moment, because I think that's interesting to see because it's partly completed. And this is the one. So this is completely scrappy.
Wow, this has come on since last time I saw it.
Turn it around that way, there we go. So it's quite big. I haven't even sort of judged how big it is now. It's quite wide.
We're still here.
Hello. It's quite wide, but it's not very high yet. So I'm just
I would say that is probably 1.5 meters wide.
Yes.
And a meter
high.
Yeah, 1 meter high.
So you can see from this, hopefully, that around the edge you can see the basting stitches there. That's the black stitches on this blue one and on this pink one. Those are the basting stitches holding the fabric onto the paper. And when you're doing English paper piecing, you do that to keep that edge nice and clean. Obviously, taking the fabric or taking the basting stitches and the paper out at this stage would mean that you would lose that hexagon shape on the edge. So all English paper piecing quilts, while they're in process, will have this edge running around that still has the paper in. But you can see underneath, hopefully, that I've taken the basting stitches and the paper out of the ones underneath. So these ones that are stiff at the edge have still got the paper in. And then it goes all lovely and soft, and it properly turns into a quilt. That's your favourite bit.
Oh, yes, it's my favourite bit. My favourite bit of Nikki's quilts is because we each share our scraps. So I like looking at Nikki's quilt and seeing what my dressmaking projects were. So I've spotted a couple already. I made this dress with roses on it last summer.
Yeah.
And this one was a little 60s shift dress the summer before.
Yeah.
This was from a beach bag that I made.
I love that one.
And this one was from another little 60s shift dress that I didn't like and never actually wore.
There's my day and night dress. That's the night dress.
Right. And this is from a vintage dress that I bought in a charity shop. That's off of the sleeves that I took off of it. So I always like looking at Nikki's paper piece quilts because I can spot a little bit of me running through them, and it just reminds me, oh, there's another one of my dresses there. Yeah. Just reminds me of all my past makes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like scraps left over from classes and things like that, so we use all of that, or I like to use all of that up. It's always cotton that we use. You can use poly cotton, but obviously it's thinner, so I don't like using poly cotton as much. I don't mind if it's a good quality poly cotton, if it's not quite so opaque. So I always try and use 100% cotton, but that can be cotton for dressmaking or cotton for quilting. It doesn't really matter what it is. You just don't want anything that's going to be stretchy. So cotton, and you don't want anything too thick either, because sometimes if you've got a heavier cotton in amongst all the softer 100% cottons, it can really feel out of place underneath the hand. So,
but I'd imagine even more than that, after you've spent however long, sometimes it takes Nikki years to make these quilts.
Yeah.
Then you want to be able to wash it and use it for years to come. And if you've got different types of fabric in the quilts, then they might wear differently over time. So you might find that over time one of those fabrics that wasn't a cotton starts to disintegrate.
Yes.
So we've seen that on old quilts where the silk-based fabrics have disintegrated.
Yes.
But also the heavy cottons, because they have more of a tendency to fray, they can pop a seam or something like that. And when you've put so much time and love and effort into creating something as beautiful as this, then you want it to last. So it's worth just using good quality cottons if you can.
And they are very washable. The first one I ever made, which I'll show you in a second, is the one that goes on my bed all through the winter. So come October, November, it goes on the bed and it comes off in the springtime and it gets washed and it gets put away, and it's lasted. There's a couple of little repairs on it, but I probably finished that 6 years ago, something like that. So it'll take me half an hour before I put it back on this winter, just to repair it, a few bits that have burst.
Should we show them that one?
Let's show it. We may have to stand up.
Yes, we'll need to stand up for this one.
This is a big one. Right, and Maisie's in here out of the way as well.
Right.
So this is...
Grab the other end.
Let's get...
We're not going to be able to show you the scale of this. What we'll have to do is take some pictures at the end.
Yeah, I'll lay them
hang
outside
them over the back fence or something.
Yes. So there you can hopefully see how big this is. So these are hexagons which have been put together, if you can see on this green one, they're put together into, well, there's a flower shape in the middle you can see, which is a very traditional shape that we use, and then I've just added one to each end, so to make this kind of sort of triangle kite shaped. And these are all scraps as well, but obviously I needed more of them because I needed to make the entire shape with the scraps, and this was the first one I ever made.
Beautiful.
And it is a proper heirloom. It's, you know, it's associated with winter and my bed, and it's washed really well. It's not a problem to wash it and to clean it, and so I've been very proud of it.
I'm not as big a fan of this one because she made this before she met me, so there's none of my fabrics in there at all. No,
all just my fabrics. I even got to the point where with this one that I was buying bags of scrap fabrics offline or online, and I didn't even care what they were. I would just buy bags of scrap fabrics and they would send it to me. This is another one. So I've got 4 to show you, and this is one I made.
A bit different, aren't they, in some way?
Yeah, this is a slightly different shape, and I thought that would be interesting for you to see. So these are like lozenge shapes. So they were quite interesting to kind of sew, because obviously you needed sort of big rectangles of fabric, and then just the small squares in the middle. And I took, this was a holiday quilt, wasn't it? I took it.
Yeah.
I started it on holiday in Italy as we were traveling around Italy, and so I was on lots of trains and planes and automobiles, and I started it and virtually finished it by the time
I couldn't believe after a 2-week holiday how big this thing was. When she came back with it, I just I thought, what else have you done on your holiday other than sew?
I was sat in 30-degree heat in a bikini by a pool quilting.
She is literally the only person I know that would do that.
No one would ever do that. But I just love it, and it's part of my downtime as well. It's psychologically, it's part of me relaxing. I'm so used to doing it now, I can't just sit there. I feel like I'm like this.
A holiday.
I need to be doing something with my hands.
When I'm on holiday, that's where I get all my reading done, so I don't get much chance to read outside of sewing books the rest of the year. But on a 2-week holiday, I might read 5 or 6 books because I'll literally just binge read them. So if I think of all those hours I spent reading, I probably could accomplish something similar. But
I do a bit of both. I do reading, and I do talk to my family when we're out.
She can't. Well,
chuck that one down there. There's one more to show you. And what's this one? So this is my one and only, apart from your one, that I made with a kind of a colour palette. So this was my first attempt at doing something which wasn't just scrap. And I do love purple, and so you can see the sort of, this is called is it a Granny's garden, flower garden or something like that it's called, I think. I can't remember what it's called exactly. But these are all 1-inch hexagons again, and this is just with the border. Unfortunately, when I bought the background fabric, this lovely sort of dusty pink colour, I then didn't realise I needed quite as much as I did. Went back to the shop and they didn't have any left, and they weren't getting any more in, so I had to improvise on the edge.
But I have to say, it's the edges that are my favourite. And that's where Nikki's signature style was born, and she's not looked back.
No,
it's been random, scrappy ever since. And I prefer that. If I'm honest.
The lovely purple on the background. And you know what's really funny? The purple on the back of that one and the purple on the back of this one, I still find little bits of those fabrics in my scrap bucket. And so every now and again I'll find one and I'll go, oh, I'll put that in this quilt. And you see, that's what I love about it.
She likes to feel like she's used every last little bit, and she doesn't feel satisfied until it's all gone. So.
I mean, realistically, the sizes that I do for the 1-inch hexagons, the squares I cut are 2.5-inch squares. So anything less than that gets thrown away. But if you think that's, it's only that big, I'm using up quite a lot of the scraps that I've got, and that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
So that's it, that's the quilts. So we'll insert some pictures, we'll take them outside and we'll lay them on the grass and stuff like that, and we'll take some proper pictures. But what we'll do is we'll reset up the camera, and I'll do a little hand sewing tutorial to show you exactly how to put them together. So I'm going to start off with 1 paper hexagon and 1 piece of fabric. The fabric is, I'm working on the back of the fabric, so you can see that I've got a nice pretty design on the front, and all I'm going to do is lay my paper hexagon on the back of the fabric. I've left a good seam allowance around the edge, so be aware of that. Make sure you don't start too close to one edge, because that will just mean that you end up with little frays in your work, and you don't want that. So we're going to start having an even amount all the way around. And the first thing I'm going to do is I work on this top edge, which is furthest away from me. It will be closest to you. And I'm folding down that first edge. You can see like that, just using my fingers to get a good press on it. And I folded it right up against the paper. The second step, I work around clockwise. Whichever way you work, it doesn't matter. We just go with whatever feels natural, but I work around clockwise. And then I'm going to take the next corner and I'm just going to fold that down in place as well, giving it a little pinch with my fingers. So if I flip it round like that, you can see that I've got one corner already done without having to put any stitches in it yet. So I'm going to grab my needle and thread, and this is just a brown cotton thread. I don't use any fancy threads, especially for the basting stitches, because you are going to end up taking them out. So just use whatever cheap cotton you've got. I've got a double thread. I always work with a double thread with a knot in the end. And I'm coming through with the needle from the back of or from the front of the piece towards me. And what I'm going to do is do a stitch over this little crease down the middle where this fabric is folded from the point of the hexagon. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. It's going to come up and over like that. And with the brown, hopefully you should be able to see that on camera. And then, so that's the stitch holding down both of those little folds. So I need to do my next fold in the next corner. So I'm pinching it over, giving it a little pinch with my fingers. And then I always come up on the left hand side and go down on the right hand side, holding down that little pleat. Moving around, doing the same again, fold it down, coming up And I've come close there, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to do huge stitches. They can be small because they're just to hold the fabric in place until you've stitched it into position on your quilt. So another fold, up and over, and then the final corner. So this final corner is quite important, and what I like to do is I like to pinch both sides, and what I'll do is I'll fold down the one nearest to me, and you can see that that's folding down quite nicely, but this one is kind of rucked up a little bit. So what you can do is, if you can do that first stitch on that first corner, and then when that one's held in place, you can just use your fingers or your needle to get underneath and pull the fabric down so that it's in position, and everything will be tucked in again just like it was to start with. And then the final one, up and over, holding down that fold, and then that's us finished. So the final thing I like to do is to get rid of my tail ends, and how I like to do it, if I show you the front now, you'll be able to see that all of these stitches are all going around the edge, almost parallel to the outside edges. So I know that that's my end because that's where my knot is, and I just want to indicate to myself where the other end of the thread is. So what I do is I just make a stitch into the middle like that, which you can see is now in the opposite direction to all the other ones, and I cut the back. You don't have to do any knots, you don't want to put any knots in it, because when you come to actually taking the basin stitches off, I know that that stitch that's coming into the middle is the first one that I pull out when I'm taking the basin threads out. But I'll show you that in a second when we get to that point. So just keep doing your hexagons until you've got a little bag of them. What I like to do is bulk do one job. So I make lots of hexagons and into a big bag, and then I sew them all together. So I'll just show you the next process, which is sewing a couple of hexagons together. So what we're going to do is we're going to take two and we're going to lay them right sides together. Like in everything in sewing, we're going to do it right sides together. And I'm taking my neutral thread now. So this is a natural, but you could use a pale grey or a pale blue, whatever matches your project. If you're doing scrap, just go for something just like a cream or an off-white. And then the first stitch, I'm going to cross like this. I'm going to stitch it across this edge here on a straight edge. I'm just going to come right in that corner, trying to almost tuck under that little fold that I've got nearest me. Again, it's a double thread knotted in the end. And I'm just going to do little stitches. It's very, very small pieces of the fabric. I'm not catching the paper at all. This is almost like that invisible piece of the fabric which is folded over the top of the paper, if you can imagine it like that. And if you can see, it's only ever one or two strands of the fabric. And then you're just doing a whip stitch away from you all the time. So little stitches like that. You can tell if you catch the paper, because you'll be able to tell that it's much tougher to go through. At the moment I'm just catching the fabric. So little tiny stitches. You don't want to be excessive, but you want to stitch enough stitches that's going to hold the hexagon in place. You want this to be an heirloom. You want it to last a long time. So I'm pulling the stitches tight and getting right to the end. If you have a tiny mismatch at the end, which I have with this one, that's just how it's been folded or how it's been laid on. But don't worry about it too much. I'm just knotting the ends now. So I've made a loop and I put my thread through twice and pull it tight. And then the last thing that I do is I dive my needle into the back of the hexagon so that I've got an extra bit to come through and a nice tidy little tail. So that's two sewn together, and you can see, because we've just taken a tiny bit of the fabric, you can't really see any stitches. And anyway, I don't really mind if you do see stitches, because I think it shows that it's been hand sewn and it's been handmade. So in order to continue to make a flower like I showed you earlier, so like one of these, what we need is we need 3 sets of 2. So 1, 2, 3. So go ahead and make 3 of those, and then I'll show you how to put them together onto the flower. So we're going to sew our 3 sets of 2 hexagons together, but we need one for the centre, so you'll need one loose one for the centre. And what I like to do is take a pair and lay them again right sides together. Now what I'm aiming to do is I'm aiming to get the hexagons to come around like that. If I lay them out like that, you can see that that's the shape that I'm doing. So when I lay these together, it's this corner here, these two sides here that I'm sewing together. So let me take that one away. So these two sides here, so you can sort of mark it with your finger and flop it over so that you know that it's that side. When you start doing it a lot, you will know just by instinct. But to begin with, what you need to do is just make sure you get the right edge, because it needs to be coming around and not going straight. Okay, so again, I'm just doing exactly the same as I did when I did put the two hexagons together. I'm just doing tiny stitches right the way across from one side to the other, pulling them tight, and then I'll knot it in the end. Okay, tiny little pieces of fabric that I'm taking under the needle there, and then knot it, do a tiny stitch in the back, and then just snip off my threads. So I'm going to work on a different thread now, but that's just because I was running out. So I've got two sewn together, and you can see it's taking the shape of the flower. So then this last one is going to go in this position, and again all I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it on top of this one, and I know that it's this edge here which will continue that hexagon flower shape right the way around. So lift it and then just start your sewing just like before. Okay, so I've now got all 6 sewn together. You can see that I haven't sewn up that final edge, but that's because I need to be able to fold everything back out of the way in order to get the central one in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn it all over onto the back, and I'm going to lay on one of the edge pieces, I'm going to lay my hexagons right sides together again. And I'm coming on this inside edge all the way around. So I'll do a couple and then we'll fast forward to the end so you can see. So just taking exactly the same as before, small bits of the fabric right the way around. Sorry, Maisie's crying if you can hear her. She wants to be on camera but she's not allowed. So there are tiny bits of the fabric. Like I said, you can use any thread. There are special threads you can get for EPP, but I've never really used them. I just use whatever I've got to hand. There we go. And I like to, when you get to the end of one of the sides, so this first one I'm just getting to the end here, what I like to do is put a knot in there before I continue on to the next side, because it's all about making sure that this stays together long enough to become an heirloom. So I knot each individual side. So I've just popped a knot in. I'm not cutting the thread, I've just knotted it, and then I'm going to fold down the next edge onto the next edge of my hexagon. So I'll do this one and then I'll show you what that looks like from the other side. So there we go, just starting again. Stitches coming across. That's it. I've gotten to the point where I can do this virtually without looking at my hands. So I can watch TV while sewing or movies while sewing, but you can't watch anything that has subtitles because you do properly lose where it's gotten to, because you miss 3 or 4 sentences at a time. Right, so coming to the end again, just that last corner, and I'm just going to put a knot in. And then I will then head on to the next one. But you can see that I've now sewn both of these sides. I'll continue around doing the rest of them, so all the outside seams, and then the final one that you will do is this outside one here. So you will have to fold the whole thing in half. There is lots of folding going on, but it is fabric, it's not going to crease, you can iron it, but the paper doesn't get damaged too much by the folding, so it's all fine. So then I'm just going to continue, fold the next one down, and off I go. So I'll get you to catch up again at the end. So I'm back with one I finished earlier, because I've got a little pile of them here that I finished earlier, and you can see that all of the hexagons are now sewn on. I'll show you the back so you can see all of the basting stitches and everything like that. So the first thing I want to show you is how to take the basting stitches out and when to take the basting stitches out. So what you're looking for is a hexagon which has another hexagon attached on all edges. Okay, so in this flower it would only be the central one that you would take out, but what you'll find is the more you sew together, the more that you can take out. So you want to leave all of these in around the edge so that you've got that stability on the hexagon shape. And how I take the basting stitches out is I look for the knot and I look for this stitch that I made coming into the middle, and I grab my scissors or a pin and I just start pulling out the threads. And because I've not knotted it, it comes out really easily. And sometimes what you do want to do is you want to make hexagons, sometimes you want to sew them together, sometimes you want to just sit there and take out all of your papers. So there you can see that it's now got no paper attached, the thread's going to the bin, the paper can be reused, and you now have a central one already done. So once you've taken the middle piece out, which you don't have to do at this point, but you will have to do it at some point, you can then start piecing the main pieces together. So you can see that they do just start naturally fitting together because all of these flowers will naturally go together and they all just fit into the nooks and crannies of the other ones. So all you would do, and you can just keep building it like that. Now my general rule when it comes to scrap quilts like this is I just try and not put the same fabric next to each other. I sometimes try and not put the same colour, but if it's a bright pink next to a baby pink or something like that, I don't really mind. But you can make up whatever rules you want. It's up to you. You could also do the same fabric all the way around the flower and have a different one in the middle. It's entirely up to you. And once you have a few that you want to sew together, all that you do again is exactly like we did the flower hexagon itself, is you just choose which edge you're going to sew together. So if I'm going to choose to sew these two together, I'm just going to fold it over so that they're right sides together, and then I'm going to sew across and do my knot in the end, flip it again and turn it back to the opposite edge and sew as many edges on as I can, and then you'll knot off at the end of each set that you've sewn together, and then you can pick up another one and sew it together. Obviously it does become cumbersome after a while because your quilt will get big, but that's the whole point of it. It's nice to do in the winter because you can sit under it as well. That's it.
So that's it. We hope you've enjoyed having a little look into Nikki's head, because in her head she's making those little hexagon flowers all the time.
All the time.
But for those of you who haven't tried quilting, EPP is a brilliant first project. It's great for when you want to sew quietly around the family and not have to be on a sewing machine making a lot of noise in another room. It's also great for if you are thinking about the impact that your sewing has on the environment, then it's great to find uses for all of those little offcuts. So we hope you've enjoyed learning how to do it, and we're going to show you the quilts now. See you soon. Bye.